Thank you, Bonnie, for giving me the pleasure of introducing our 11th annual retreat master, Father Michael Rotan. As Bonnie already mentioned, he was also our second retreat master back in 2012. You know, at my age, it's a little difficult to, in fact, it's dangerous to rely on your memory, but I'm going to have to do that for right now. I feel that I met Father Rotan close to 20 years ago, and it was through one of our very favorite mutual priests, Father Louis Ogden. And he happened to be our fourth retreat master, if any of you were there for that. We all enjoyed a breakfast together up at Hotel Hershey. And Father, I think, was a deacon at the time, and in his background, he has both a scientist as well as a teacher. And I had been fairly recently retired, and I thought we solved all the problems of education at that breakfast at Hotel Hershey, but I think there's still a few remaining. Father was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Harrisburg in 2004. He began his studies for the priesthood at St. Vincent Seminary in Latrobe, where he received a BA in philosophy, an MA in sacred scripture, and a Master of Divinity degree. His past assignments include Good Shepherd in Camp Hill, Seven Sorrows in Middletown, as well as serving as the chaplain at Trinity High School. In 2008, he was the pastor of St. Benedict the Abbot and the Chapel of Fatima, and also served as the chaplain at Lebanon Catholic. I was so happy when it was announced that he was going to be the pastor of St. Joan of Arc, Hershey, in 2011. He has had a profound influence in the short time that he was allowed to be there. You're going to find him as an excellent homilist, making everything very interesting and reliable, and even included some role-playing. One time he told me his mother, when he was a senior in high school, he had to take some elective. His mother told him to take drama club. And he didn't think he wanted to, but it shows up. He is just excellent in role-playing. Okay. Well, we were so sorry that he was only with us for 3 years. And that was because of his fluency in the Spanish language. He had to be recalled to St. Benedict the Abbot in Lebanon and also St. Mary's. At St. Joan of Arc, we just had to accept the fact that he had very special talents and they were needed elsewhere. While at St. Joan of Arc, I was a substitute teacher there, so I saw his interaction with the students at our school there. He certainly has the talent and the ability to be an inspiration to young people, as well as some of us older folks too. That talent carries over to all of us. This made his next priestly assignment especially important because he was the chaplain at Bucknell University, unluckily for those students that were enrolled there. Now, he still uses that fluency in the Spanish language, as his current assignment is the Spanish apostolate, which is either headquartered in Hanover and okay. And I just want you to know, Father, that I never had a course in Spanish, so I sure hope you're going to speak English to us today. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you a friend and our special retreat master for this year, Father Michael W. Rotan.
Thank you. It was better than that, don't you?
They already applauded automatically.
I appreciate that introduction. I do recall that breakfast. Father Ogden was a dear friend of mine. He really did take me under his wing, and I was only there for 1 year. And when you talk about we never had formal instruction in Spanish, neither did I. Seriously. So in the seminary, they had only, this is 25 years ago. So they didn't have a program started up yet at St. Vincent. So what they would do is those of us who needed to know a little Spanish they would gather us around a table with a guy from Colombia. And he'd try to teach us. We didn't have any books, we didn't have any papers, anything like that. So I did that for 2 years, and that was the extent of it. And this is why you always have to watch out for priestly gossip. Because Bishop Rhodes called me when I'm in the driveway of someone's house getting ready to go in for dinner, and he says, "Hey Mike, how are you?" Which is like the kiss of death. And I said, "All right, Bishop." He said, "I want to make you a pastor in Lebanon Catholic, and this and that. And by the way, it's a Spanish-English parish." And I said, "Bishop, I don't speak Spanish." And he said, "Well, all the priests on personnel said you were fluent." So I paused and said a little prayer against all those priests. And then I went to St. Benedict. And that was a trial by fire. The people were really wonderful. I mean, really salt of the earth, and really wanted to help me in doing that. And language is so important. I had been away from Spanish for 4 years at Bucknell, 3.5, 4 years. So when Bishop Gaynor called me and he said, "I have a special project for you. You know, it's Management 101 that only you can do." Because I said, "Bishop, you have 3 native speaker priests who could do this." And he said, no, I need you to do it. And I said, "I haven't spoken Spanish in 4 years, let alone listen to it." And he said the same thing Bishop Rhodes said, "You'll do fine. You'll do fine." We had a food festival, and at the end of that food festival, I had my first meeting with all the leaders in the Spanish community at St. Joseph Church. And so we're sitting around the table, and the word for chicken is pollo. And so I'm sitting in this meeting, and every single individual group leader is saying, "Padre, apoyarte, apoyo." And I'm thinking, what happened with the chicken? Like, did people get poisoned? Are we going to get sued for this? And then the next group, "Padre, apoyarte, apoyo, apoyo." And I'm like, oh, here it is again. It just kept coming up. Everyone around the table. And for 2 hours, they went on about this chicken. And so at the end of the meeting, I went up to the one bilingual woman there, and I said, "What happened? Like, did someone die, or are we going to get sued?" Or she said, "Padre, what are you talking about?" And I said, every single one of them said, "Apoyo." And she said, "Apoyo means support." They were saying, "We support you, Father, and we want your support." And here I'm talking about chicken the whole time. And I bring this up because the moment we don't understand a word, sometimes we just skip over it. And that's when we begin not to understand. And so language is so important. I've learned this over the last I've always loved language, but over the last 25 years really studied ancient languages and the nuance with that. And modern language, now more Spanish. I'm still not fluent in Spanish. When I tell people, if I told this group here, I am the Spanish priest in Hanover. Exactly. And that's how they looked at me too. They're like, "Seriously? Like, this is the best they could send us, this guy." You know? But they're very patient, and they're very good in that way, and I've learned so much. So I want to pay particular attention to these words that we're going to be talking about for the next 2 days. And I thought it appropriate, that little card that you're going to get on your way out of here does have my books advertised on the front of it. But on the back of it, it has a little methodology. And I want you to keep that, because I'm going to begin with a prayer tonight. And the prayer is literally what God says about you and me. And I think it's so important to be able to have that dialogue, because therein is the truth. No matter what all this says, no matter what people are doing or saying or whatever else, if we have that connection with the divine, who is the truth, not a truth, the truth, then we won't be led astray by that. And so we begin tonight, Conference 1. The title is A Catholic Exorcism of a Woke Culture, Casting Out the Demons Cleverly Embedded in our new normal. And what I want to talk about tonight is the roller coaster. So let's begin with a prayer. Oh my goodness. It's come to that. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I marvel at your desire for my company. I stand in awe that your love finds and chooses me. For I had given up all hope of ever being addressed so lovingly by anyone. And now you choose me and tell me that I make a difference to you. Utterly amazed, I experience myself differently because of your choice. I learn to appreciate myself in a new way. I see my worth and my contribution when I look at myself with your eyes. How can I begin to thank you? I marvel at your desire for my company. I stand in awe that your love finds and chooses me, for I had given up all hope of ever being addressed so lovingly by anyone. And now you choose me and tell me that I make a difference to you. Utterly amazed, I experience myself differently because of your choice. I learn to appreciate myself in a new way. I see my worth and my contribution when I look at myself with your eyes. How can I begin to thank you? Amen. Amen. So tonight, to begin, would you put out your hand? Open it up. It's my gift for you, okay? Keep it. Don't lose it. Don't let her take it. All right? All right. Now, let me use this quickly.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. All right, you. Do you know your numbers 1 to 10? You think so? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, now can you answer questions quickly and without thinking? Some? Oh, come on. Is there another volunteer? All right. So there's 2 rows of numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, top or bottom. Choose a row of numbers. Odds or evens, top or bottom?
Top.
Top, bottom, okay. Top's gone. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. Choose 3 out of these 5 numbers left.
4, 8, 10.
4, 8, 10. Okay, 4, 8, 10, 10, 8, 4. Choose 2 of those 3 numbers left.
4, 8.
4, 8. 1 of the 2 numbers left.
4, 8.
1 of the 2.
Oh, 1, 1, 1.
God gives the needy, not the greedy. So 4 or 8? 8 or 4?
8.
8. You chose 8, right? That's number 8?
Yes.
Okay. Open up that little piece of paper and show me what number is on that.
Number 8.
It's a miracle. That is her first miracle right there. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you how to do this. I worked at a miniature golf course when I was a teenager. We had a rainy day and everyone came inside of the snack bar, and one of those people was a magician. And he sat here at this table and he did it 100 times and we could not figure it out. That's how good you are, I mean, if you figure that out. So the point I bring this out is, first of all, that opening prayer was for you. Before you're a mother, a sister, a daughter, an aunt, a grandma, you're you. At the beginning, God wanted a relationship with you. And He still wants that. That didn't change when you became a mother or sister or a teacher or a lawyer or whatever else. that never changed. And part of the point of a retreat is to force that to happen. And what happens is God places within each of us this purpose. That's why you're unlike anyone ever before. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. He places this purpose. How are we supposed to figure this out? By asking our friends? I mean, they might have some kind of inkling, maybe. Asking our parents? Maybe. Teachers? Whatever. But what happens is the more often we go to prayer, the more often some of these things get crossed out and eliminated. And the path becomes clearer. Because we're going to the designer. We're going to the one who designed the whole thing. And so who better to go to for the instruction than the designer who made it in the first place? And so I want to encourage you on this retreat to enter into that. For those of you who, well, first of all, let me address the elephant in the room. I forgot about this. When Bonnie called me to ask me to do this retreat, she said, please send me a picture and a bio. I did not send that picture. If this was me 6 months ago when she asked for it, it's been a heck of a Lent. All right? I sent her the picture of me that was taken 10 years ago. All right? So I just want to, don't feel like you got shafted or it's bait and switch or whatever else. So when you go on a retreat, it is not supposed to be comfortable, really. And I got to give you credit. I really do. Because having worked with high school students, having worked with college students, and even young adults, I mean, some of you obviously have some physical things that have happened over the years that happening to me now. You're going to be sleeping in a strange bed, in a strange place, with a strange bathroom, and having to go everywhere. I can't think of more sacrifice happening right now. Seriously. So I feel a little, trepidatious about talking about the discomforts of a retreat. But it is. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to take us out of the world, out of our comfort zone. In fact, many of the churches have stained glass windows, and that was not only to educate people, because they were illiterate. They could be educated by the stories and pictures. It was to block out the outside world. So that when you enter into church in the sanctuary, it is a sanctuary, sanctus. It is holy. And the outside world can't come in there. And then a great tragedy occurred. That's right. So what happened is the church could no longer keep the outside world out. We bring the outside world in. So please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. And I would encourage you, if you can, déjalo. Just let it go. Let it go. If you're on call, I get it. If you need to hear from your kids or whatever, I understand. But how many of us do? So if you don't, please try to let it go. It is a major problem right now among our children. It really is. And so to be able to go on retreat is supposed to be uncomfortable. That means that I can't have that thing always with me. That's uncomfortable. It really is. And so I just want to encourage you that if you're on this retreat and you start to gripe a little bit, this bed is hard, it's hot in here, the food is bad, just think of this picture. The angry Jesus. If you go up to the glass chapel, this mosaic is actually up there. I call it the angry Jesus. It's actually called Pantocrator, which means Jesus Christ Conqueror. This was key for me when I was in 8th grade. We took a pilgrimage here with my 8th grade class. And I was a teacher of 8th graders. We took a pilgrimage here, and I was still thinking about the seminary. And I went up to their glass chapel for the first time, and I saw this face, and he's like, seriously? Like, what's taking so long? And that was it. That really kind of tipped me there. So if you're thinking about a retreat to be comfortable, it's not. Now there will be relief, but it's not relief like a vacation, like you're just, it's more like this. When you're on a cruise ship and there's 25-foot swells, and for a few days you're rocking and rolling, and you finally get to shore, and you crawl up and you kiss the ground. That's what Sunday's supposed to be. So it is really supposed to take us up and down. It really is supposed to be a roller coaster for us. You know, many priests would never give a retreat like this, where you talk about when you talk about these hot button issues, and I am among that number. When I was asked to give this retreat, I thought, you know what, I'm going to take the men's retreat from 2 years ago and just change it over for the women. Like Monsignor King is going to do this year for the men. He's not standing behind me, is he? No, it makes sense. Work smarter, not harder. You already have the retreat. You can tweak it a little bit, change it up, and it makes perfect sense. And theirs was from virus to virtue, talking about, you know, the silver lining in the pandemic and how we can, you know, reclaim the virtues from the vices that sometimes sneak in there. And the more I was, you know, kind of thinking about this idea, it's already done. It's easy. The more the Lord was pulling on my heart and saying, seriously? I mean, that's what you're going to do? Anybody can do that. I've been, as Barb said, I was to a number of assignments, and one of the struggles I had, and priests have this, and I don't want to, you know, throw any of my brother priests under the bus, but you replace a priest who's well-liked, that's hard. Nobody wants to see him go. What's even more difficult is when you find out they were well-liked because they only talked about the love and mercy of God. That's it. So there is no sin, there is no hell, there is no suffering, there is no sacrifice. God loves you, and that's enough. And then, you know, you go into that situation and people will say, you know, we loved this priest because he told us how much God loved us and how merciful God was. Why are you talking about abortion? Why are you talking about civil unions? Why are you talking about euthanasia and all these things? Just tell us what we need to hear. Well, I am. So when I arrived at Joan of Arc, that first summer we were supposed to have a mission, and all the gears were already moving for this parish mission. Father Dennis Gill from Philadelphia was going to come up and give it. A very gifted liturgist. And he called at the last minute and he said, I can't give this mission anymore because we have a new archbishop, Chaput. And he said, so I got to take care of all this stuff. Just like we do now. You know, Bishop Senior is you know, getting in the diocese, learning stuff. Poor Father Brommer is just like, oh, I got to prepare all this stuff. So we were going to cancel, but so many things were already out there. It was already advertised. So the parochial vicar and I decided to give the parish mission. We had a great house there. It really was a fun house, like in both senses of the word. It was me and a parochial vicar, newly ordained, 2 Nigerian priests, and it was just such a great time. And the theme of this retreat that we gave was, I came to bring the sword. First impressions, right? I came to bring the sword because Jesus says, do you think I came to bring peace upon the earth? Not peace, but the sword. Like I came to divide up families over this stuff. Nobody hears these things. So each night of this mission, it was 3 nights. In fact, it's still on YouTube. I'm surprised they haven't taken it down. They recorded all those homilies and missions at that time. They're all on YouTube. But it was 3 nights during which time we offered childcare so that the adults could come and be spoken to like adults. We wouldn't have to just, you know, kind of dumb it down because there were kids present or whatever else. And it was very well attended. And I spoke the first night. The second night, the parochial vicar spoke the struggles. He's a younger guy, so he spoke about the struggles that teens have and everything else. And then the final night that closed it down, we did this parish mission. And I think it was so important because people came up after that and said, we never heard this before. And there's a danger there. Because if you don't hear it, it is ignorance. It is. And if you don't hear it because someone intentionally didn't want to talk about it, well, That's not good for anybody. We need to know the truth. It is the truth that ultimately sets us free. And so when I came up with this retreat title, and Bonnie actually sent me a message saying, what does it mean? Like, explain this. People want to know what it means. And I thought, okay, I get that. So first of all, what does woke mean? Why would you need to exercise it? And why did I even decide to do this retreat? And I think, answering the third question first, the reason why I decided to do this retreat is because it is what people need to hear. Because they're not hearing it everywhere. And if we can figure stuff out and we can see the truth from the lies, well, once you can see in that way, you can't unsee it. Thankfully. So for instance, if I gave someone a folded up piece of paper with a number 8, it could just as easily be a number 2 or 3 or 10 or whatever. And so I want to ask them quickly so they don't have time to think and process what's happening. So choose a row of numbers, top or bottom, odd or even. Well, if they choose the odd, you cross out the odd. If they choose the even, you cross out the odd. It's called a force. You can do it with cards too. Choose 3 numbers. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. 2, 6, and 10. Okay, then I'll cross those out. What if they chose 4, 8, and 10? Then I cross those out. And then finally, out of those 2 numbers left, choose one of the 2. I choose, now she chose 8, which was awesome. Because it makes it seem like it is a miracle. But if she chose 4, oh, you chose 4? Then I'll cross out 4. What number is left? Now, I should have told you, if you didn't want to know the trick, turn your head away and cover your ears. The point is, if I did that trick again 100 times, you would see it every single time. It's a trick. It's meant to get us to think about something else, and that's what's happening. So there is a word in Latin, confusus. Not Confucius, confusus, which we get confusion from. And what confusus in Latin literally means is you take one word that has one meaning, but then you give it another meaning as well. And then people don't know which meaning you're talking about, but they still use the word. So it's all mezcla en la cabeza. It's all mixed up in the head. Well, wait, do I believe that? Or don't I believe that? Or am I talking about this or that? And so the first demon we need to exercise is confusion, confusus. So what about woke? Woke is actually a post-slavery term, which was used among the slaves who had been freed, and they said, remember, stay woke, be aware. You know, you were slave once, don't trust anyone, and in fact, don't even trust your brothers, because it was the chieftains in Africa who sold their own people into slavery. So it's like, be awake, just be aware, you're free now, don't take anything for granted. I think that's a great message. Where many times in the scriptures that they say, be awake. You know, Habakkuk says it, Joel says it, Isaiah says it. All 4 Gospels, Jesus says, be awake, be aware. The epistles of St. Paul, even in Revelation, be awake, you do not know the day or the hour. So to be woke, to be aware, is not bad at all. In fact, it's good. It's virtuous. It's on guard. And the recent definition coming out of Webster's is to be aware of injustices, especially with regards to race or social justice and stuff like that, which is certainly good as well, to be aware of that. I mean, there is injustice, let's face it. You can find it. However, we can't pick and choose our injustices. We talk about equal justice. Equal justice. And that's important. So what has happened is, this word which was good is now confusus. They took it, and woke no longer means be aware, look for injustice. It now means no holds barred. I'm okay, you're okay, live and let live. Everything should not only be approved of, but promoted. And if you don't do that, you do not love. You are a hater. And that's a word to shut you down. If they say, you're racist, you're a hater, you're a phobe of some kind. It's meant to shut you down. We can't let that happen. It's Confucius. So it is the demon of Confucius. So woke is a good word. We need to be that. But it has now been possessed. So just as a body is possessed by a demon, the demon uses the body for its nefarious means, so too do they possess the language. And you know it's been heard, if you control the language, you can control the narrative, you can control people's minds, you can, it's power there. So how do we rebut this? Because if they're saying, no, you're a hater, there's a guy, he's a professor, philosopher, Jordan Peterson, who I don't believe is Christian necessarily. He talks about God an awful lot for someone who's not faithful. But he wrote these 12 lessons for life. And you know how you find someone who puts things in words the way you cannot, but you're glad you have them? He does this, and there's a great book out, Jordan Peterson, God and Christianity. The opening is by Bishop Barron. And it essentially takes his 12 lessons for life and says, wow, he doesn't disagree with Catholicism at all. In fact, sometimes he actually reinforces it. And I want you to listen to what he says about love, because this is important. He says, scared parents think that a crying child is always sad or hurt. This is simply not true. Anger is one of the most common reasons for crying. Careful analysis of the musculature patterns of crying children has confirmed this. Anger crying is often an act of dominance and should be dealt with as such. We cannot use desire, when we talk about love, we cannot use desire as the standard for determining what is good, both for children and adults, because we frequently are desiring bad things, which includes the desire to dominate others and cause them harm. To love a child is not to reward the inner monster, nor to pacify it. It is to teach her or him that monsters will not be tolerated, and in doing so to give their inner potential for becoming a good person a fighting chance. In other words, many times we hear, well, you're a hater, and we're supposed to know, it's much more of a sacrifice to say something. It's much more of a sacrifice to say, no, you're worth so much more than this, or no, you can pursue more than this. I want to press upon you for the next 2 days as I'm talking about these hot button issues. I'm not talking about a person necessarily. Sometimes this gets confused. Confucius, we need to exercise that demon. That if I say something in principle is bad or evil, they say, well, you're saying I'm evil. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm saying this is evil. And so we don't reduce the person to the one thing they do wrong. See, everyone memorized that line in Luke's Gospel, where he says, judge not, lest you be judged. Condemn not, lest you be condemned. I wish they knew the rest of the Bible as good as that. Right? But if you look at that, there are 2 words that are used here. All the Gospels, the epistles, Revelation, it's all, the New Testament's in Greek. Translated from whatever Jesus said. And imagine being a gospel writer, especially Luke. Luke is writing it in a high Greek, a very poetic Greek. So particular about the words that he can use to translate what Jesus said. And when Jesus says, do not condemn and you will not be condemned, that word is krisis in Greek. We get the word crisis from that. Krisis is translated into Latin damnatio. In other words, you are damning someone to hell. Yeah, don't do that. Who wants to do that? It doesn't help anything. So we get that one, but what about the other word where he says, judge not, lest ye be judged. I use the King's English, of course, because that's the way people memorize it. That word in Greek is katadiakaseste. Everyone? Katadiakaseste. Katadiakaseste. Katadiakaseste literally means to reduce the person to their sin. So in other words, if you lie to me, you are now a liar. That is what you are. If you committed adultery, you are now an adulterer. You can't change that. It's immutable. That's who your person is right now. If you have robbed me, you are a thief. That is who you are. You can't undo that. That's what cut it doesn't mean don't judge. We have to judge. We're given the gift of right judgment. But what he's saying is, if you condemn someone to hell, are they going to convert? No. Are they going to follow you? No. And if you reduce someone to the sin that they did wrong, is that going to give them hope for forgiveness? No. So don't do it. Don't do it. It's not helpful. But he goes on to say, sin will inevitably occur. But woe to those who would lead one of my little ones astray. That's the difference. So when we talk about these things in this quote-unquote woke culture, I'm not talking about the person who felt they had no other option but to have an abortion. I'm talking about the individuals who shout their abortion and who want others to do the same and who want to draw others into that culture of death. I'm not talking about the person who's struggling with same-sex attraction or even in a same-sex union who's trying to live out their life the best they can. I'm talking about a movement that says this is what you should do and you should be proud of it. It is what it is doing, this demon of Confucius is saying good is bad and bad is good. And we begin to believe it. And why do we believe it? Because we don't want to be a hater. What are the signs everywhere around you see? Be kind. I remember the first time I saw one of those, I wanted to shout out, you know what, you be kind! The sentiment is good. The sentiment is good. Be nice to each other, because COVID was a tough time. I mean, people, strangling each other for toilet paper and other things like that. It was rough, seriously. So be kind is a good message, but what does that mean? Does anyone know what that means? Can you define it? Because I can. I'm just asking. Kind means to will the good of the other. To be kind literally means to will the good of the other. And if I have someone who is enmeshed in a horrible lifestyle, and I am willing their good, I'm not going to enable them to continue. Let alone encourage them to do that. And say, there is no God. And so in exercising this woke culture, we have to come forward and say, that original prayer we started with, everyone, before there was a mother, father, daughter, son, sister, brother, whatever, God created them for them, was in a relationship with them. And that includes everyone. Remember, Jesus says, the Father wishes that none of them would be lost, but that they would be raised up on the last day. None of them. That none of them would be lost, but that they would be raised up. He wants us all together. The church has never said anyone is in hell, ever. They've said plenty of people are in heaven. They're called saints. So there's always hope. But how can they find hope if they're surrounded by a message that says bad is good and good is bad? They can't. It's next to impossible. And so what has happened in this current era is we have all these extremes. We have people on this side who are making fun of this wokeness because they're like, this is ridiculous, this is over the top. You have people on the other side that are saying, oh no, this is how we all should be. It's tired of all these laws and rules and everything else and this bigotry and everything. Let's just make everything permissible and we'll promote it. And the concern is if an individual is making choices, they make choices, they're an individual. But when they start teaching children to do this, or they start influencing people who might not know, who are vulnerable to that. That's what I mean. I'm not talking about individuals who struggle with sinfulness. Jesus said sin will inevitably occur, but woe to those who lead one of my little ones astray. And he often calls his apostles little ones. Technoi, the little kids. What does he say? It would be better that a millstone were hung about your neck and you thrown into the sea. It's the only time he mentions capital punishment in the gospel. And so he's saying, I know you're going to sin. That's why I offer you forgiveness. But woe to you who lead others to believe there is no such thing as sin. You're in trouble. and it would be better if you weren't even here. This is Jesus the Good Shepherd. This is Jesus who wishes that none of them would be lost, but that they would be raised up on the last day. So how can we even begin to compete with this stuff? I mean, there's no way, because the voices are so loud and there's so many people out there and it's just overwhelming. Where can we go in order to try to combat the loudness of the world? And where we go is back to the beginning. And that beginning word was truth. The Word is truth. And in the truth also is the life. And so I want to encourage you over this time in retreat to have a conversation with God. We celebrated a few weeks ago Pentecost. The apostles are in the upper room. They lost twice. They lost Jesus when he died. Now they lost him again. He ascended into heaven. They've given up everything to be with him. Everything. And now they're in the upper room scared to death. They're at the end of their rope. They're praying. They're in deep prayer, all huddled up together. And they're waiting for this Holy Spirit, whatever that means. And then the Spirit comes. And the next day they're out on the street. They can't keep it to themselves, even at a threat of death. I want to encourage all of us over these next 2 days to visit the upper room. Go to the upper room and have a dialogue with God. An honest dialogue. And what you do, you imagine, close your eyes and quiet yourself, and you imagine there are 2 chairs. Comfortable chairs. Not comfortable enough that you fall asleep. Comfortable chairs. And you don't even have to see God. This entity there who is all truth and who knows you inside and out, knows your deepest, darkest secret that maybe you've even forgotten, you never told anyone so long, knows all that, knows the worst thing you've ever done, the best thing you've ever done in your life. And there's a conversation. And it starts very simply. And I'm going to give you an example of this, a true example from my life, because this is how I enter into my holy hour. And just like a parent, God would say, well, what did you do today? And I mentioned I had had a run-in with a staff member that day. And I didn't sleep the night before, and I was just a little stressed. And I snapped. And just, it wasn't anything bad or anything. I was just very short with her. And he said, well, why did you do that? Well, I was tired. And I was stressed out, and well, you should apologize to her. What? I was stressed out. I was in. Those are explanations. But it doesn't change the fact you should apologize to her. What didn't you do today? Well, I was with my mom the last part of the day. I go to my mom's on Mondays to take care of her finances and stuff, and then we'll have happy hour about 5 o'clock. I try to keep her away from HSN and QVC. And so I said, well, I had a full day as a mom. I washed the porch, I did this and that. And so I missed 2 of the hours of my prayers. Priests have to pray 5 times a day. I said, I missed the 2 hours of my prayers. And this voice of truth says, well, why did you do that? I was with my mom. I mean, I thought it was I chose the better part. I'm, being with her, I'm actively being, and then the response came to me. It's very moving for me. He said, do you think your mother would want to pray with you? Oh my God! Yes. Are you sure? Oh, she'd be delighted. I know it. The next day, I apologized to that staff member who was so shocked and said, oh, I just thought you were busy. But thank you so much. You didn't have to do that. Thank you so much. She's my #1 fan now. Inadvertently. I wouldn't even thought of that. You know, the impression you have on other people. And I didn't get to be with my mom yet where I could pray with her, but I know as soon as I say, would you like to pray together? She'll say, well, now I have to buy a prayer book. I wonder if they have them on QVC. Because I can do 4 payments. I can do regular payments. If you go to the upper room, I promise you, and be honest, go to the upper room and take that time and just wait for it. Wait for it. And the words will come to you. Why did you do that? Who were you with? How did you feel? And it becomes addictive. Because now you're speaking with this person who's had the number since the beginning and wants to show you who you can be. This prayer at the beginning, you know, saying, now I see me with your eyes. I see myself with your eyes. How can I begin to thank you? There was a teacher going around the kindergarten class. He told them to draw a picture, any picture they wanted to. And you always take a risk when you do this, especially if you're going to guess what the picture is. But he went around and he came up to this little girl and he said, oh, honey, what are you drawing? She said, I'm drawing a picture of God. And he said, well, honey, nobody knows what God looks like. And she responded, they will in a minute. That's what we're supposed to do. If we go to the upper room and we are honest, and we can give and we can receive, then we can show people what God looks like. We can have a dialogue with them, not with a movement or an agenda or a demon called Confucius. We can have a dialogue with another person who God loves just as he loves us. And that is how we bring people to Christ. Show them the face of God, and they'll never turn away. And so I want to encourage you, as you get that card on the way out, on the back are kind of like those little steps to be able to do that. During this retreat even, you're going to encounter people that you may not have met before, you may not have seen. We're all here for similar reasons. I wish some of you could sit beside me in the confessional sometimes. Because you would say, oh my gosh, that's me. Or like, we could be best friends. Oh my gosh. And that's the Christian journey. So many of us want the same things, but we feel overwhelmed by the outside. So let's keep the outside out over the next 2 days. Go back to the stained glass windows. Take refuge in the sanctuary in the upper room.